What's up, everybody? How's it going? Welcome to this first pilot episode of the Dansg08 podcast. In this first episode, I am joined by Peter Bird, aka P-Birdman, who you guys will hopefully all know from the modded version of Final Fantasy X that I've been playing. Before we get into it, I just wanted to make like a little intro just to let you guys know that this is something that I'm trying on the channel, just as like a new format. P-Birdman was kind enough to join me on this, and we chatted about the game and our experiences, our histories with Final Fantasy, and of course we talked a little bit about the mod as well. So I hope you enjoy the content. I've got a few more people on my list that I'd love to talk to and try to do this format with in the future, but just know that this was our first attempt to do it. Neither of us have any podcast experience, but we've done our best. I think it turned out pretty well, and I hope you guys enjoy it while listening. So thank you for listening and watching, and enjoy the podcast. First of all, thank you for joining me for this, because obviously it's a bit ironic because I'm a bit of a guinea pig for your mod and you're going to be a guinea pig for my podcast. So thank you for joining us, P-Birdman.
It's no problem. If I can just say first, I'm honoured and I like you for being this guinea pig on your new podcast. And at the same token, I hate your guts for being this new guinea pig on this new podcast.
It should be a good time. I mean, I did think about who to start this whole thing with, and it just seemed like the naturally the best option to start with you, because the P-Birdman mod thing has been like a good bit of content on the channel. A lot of people interested in it. And to be honest, I was interested in getting to chat to you as well, because we've been on Discord for like a year or so, chatting away. But to do it in this kind of format, I think is going to be a lot more fun. So looking forward to it. I think the first thing is like, obviously me as well, because I mean, when we talk, is a lot of it is kind of all business. Like we're always just talking about the mod, talking about the game and that kind of thing. But of course, I think me and the viewers would like to know more about like, who is the man behind the mod? Who is P-Birdman?
Well, I'm from UK, just like yourself, in Manchester. Funnily enough, I'm not actually in the computer industry. So I'm just more in the food industry. So it's nothing exceptional. Still a key worker in this dark times, though. But
right, okay. I was going to ask you about that because you mentioned like you're going to be at home on these days and not around. So you work in the food industry. What exactly, like, what part of that are you in?
It's like food distribution, food and drink. I'm more kind in like the stock controlling area to make sure all the stuff's going out.
Right, okay.
So it's classed as one of the key workers. So I've still got to work through these times. To be honest, it's like every day is like a Sunday driving.
Yeah, it's true. I can imagine.
You kind of bring. I'm surprised that Morrissey song's not come back out. Every day is like Sunday. I hear it all the time, and it's all I think about now when I'm driving. It's like, yeah, I've got to go home in rush hour. Oh, it doesn't matter. It's just like Sunday drivers.
I've been hearing about this thing about there's going to be a lot more fines now, because I've been seeing it on the roads too. There's just so many more people just taking advantage of the empty roads, just doing like crazy, like dangerous moves and like speeding.
Oh yeah, I still see all idiots on the roads speeding down around the corners and trying to do the handbrake turns and all that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like, what's the point?
Exactly. I don't know, man.
At least by going home, you can get on Final Fantasy.
Of course, exactly. All right, so of course, whenever I'm talking to someone who, of course, loves Final Fantasy, I've got to know, like, what is your story with Final Fantasy X? How did you discover it? What was it like the first time you played it? All of that good stuff. I love hearing about these things.
Well, it was actually kind of a fluke, to be honest with you. I mean, I got it probably about a year after it came out officially. So it's probably it come out here a lot longer later, I should say, than say America or obviously Japan.
Mm-hmm.
So I probably got it around about 2002 maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
I say it was a fluke. I got it because I only got it because I went out just to get a box of donuts, to be fair. I kind of got an inkling for some Bavarian donuts, and there was a nice Hamptons or Spinks, whatever it was called back then. So as I went out there was a Woolworths nearby, so I just kind of like popped in, seeing what was on the shelves, and I noticed Final Fantasy X. So took a look at the box, read it, and thought, go on, I'll give it a go. And the rest, as he says, is history.
Wow. So what kind of stuff were you playing at the time before that?
I really like, and I still do, to be honest, the Grand Theft Auto series. I really like the Grand Theft Auto 3, Vice City, San Andreas. All them were fantastic games. And to be honest with you, before that, I still got them now on the PC. The originals, GTA and GTA 2, the original top-down.
Ah, okay,
game,
cool.
where it all started, which was really cool.
Nice. I mean, I was big into. I think GTA 3 is probably still my favorite. It was the first GTA I ever played.
Yeah.
But during like the early years of like PS2 gaming, even when I was playing Final Fantasy X, I think GTA 3 was a game that I came back to quite a lot. I don't know, there was just something about it was just so good. I don't know why.
Yeah, absolutely. I think on top of the good graphics, it's the gameplay that gets me. It's really good gameplay. You can always go back to it. I can complete it, go back to it, complete it, go back to it. Obviously, you've got to take a break here and there, but... on top of that, I was also, I think, playing Gran Turismo 3.
Yeah, okay. I mean, we were playing similar stuff. I mean, because for me, I'm remembering like the earliest days of PS2 for me was Grand Theft Auto 3, Gran Turismo 3, and maybe like FIFA 2003, that kind of thing. So I was into a lot more of that sort of stuff, and Final Fantasy wasn't really the type of game that I was actually playing back then, which was interesting. Yeah, I sunk a lot of hours into. I think 2, 3, and 4 were the ones I played the most. I do remember playing 2 on the PS1 as well a lot.
Yeah.
And I think up to about 4 I played them a lot, and then 5 I think was when I started to kind of lose a bit of interest. It became a bit too online for me.
To be honest, I was kind of like the same. I think same with Grand Theft Auto. I love the originals. I love the 3D versions in PS2. When I got the PS3, Grand Theft Auto 4 was quite okay, and then when I got to 5, graphics obviously were spot on. The actual story was brilliant, characters were great, but I find the whole open world aspect a little bit next generation sort of thing, because I like to unlock things as I go along, rather than just have it everywhere you can go to straight from the get-go. It's kind of the same with the Zelda series, which I'm actually into as well. On the Nintendo, I really like them, but the newer ones like the Breath of the Wild, again, just like GTA 5, it's great graphics, all open world, it looks like good story, but again, I prefer you have to go and unlock that, find that, unlock that, find that, unlock that to progress the story.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I remember from GTA 3 there was this thrill of like you had the broken bridge between the first and the second island, and you knew that there was this whole like other world there that you didn't have access to. And then obviously the first time you managed to get over the bridge, like the bridge got repaired and you made your first trip across the island. It was just insane. Like I remember that was so thrilling as a kid. So I remember it was good fun, man.
When you look back at them now though, it's like they still look good for the time, and that's the thing, they age well.
I agree, yeah. Considering how open it was as well. I mean, they were quite big maps for like early PS2 days.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when it comes to Final Fantasy X, you said it was a fluke. So it's a bit like me as well. I don't know if you ever heard my story of how I found Final Fantasy X as well.
No, I don't think I have, actually.
Yeah, so for me, it was basically my dad worked as a courier driver at the time for, I think it was either Omega or DHL. It was before Omega got brought out by DHL. And so he was delivering to, I believe it was like a video game, either magazine or journalism kind of office sort of place. And they asked him, like, do you know anyone who plays video games? And he's like, yeah, my son's quite into it. And I think they had like a review copy of Final Fantasy X they had from back in the day, and also Virtua Fighter 4. And they gave him both games just like as a little gift. They said, take it home to your son. He might be interested in playing these. So he just turned up one day with like this review copy of Final Fantasy X, and I had no idea what it was, never heard of it, and it was just one of them things where I think the first time I played it, because I was so much into these other games I was telling you about that are just so different from Final Fantasy, and Final Fantasy X has quite an odd, very slow start.
Yeah.
And I played like an hour, and I think I was just like, I just could not get into it. I think it was like 2004, maybe early 2004 when I first played, and I was like 12 at the time, and I was just like, I don't know what's really happening here. Like this, I don't think I like this. And I remember like just abandoning it the first time I played. And it was only maybe like a few months later when I had a cousin round, and we were just bored and we had like a few hours to kill. And I was like, oh, I've got this game called Final Fantasy X that I've been trying to play, but I just didn't really like it that much. Should we try it again? And then we started playing together. So I was playing and he was watching. And the first save file, like I renamed Tidus as his name in my first save. And that save was the one where for some reason that night it clicked in a different way. And after he went home, I just continued playing and playing and playing and basically never looked back from there, really.
I don't think I had many memories of my first time I played it, but I'm pretty sure I did do what most people do when they first play it. Just blitz through it as quick as you can, mash your necks, and then got stuck on See More Flux. But
I mean, I'm trying to remember. Honestly, I don't remember that much from my earlier save too. I mean, Flux must have definitely been one of those kind of bosses, and of course,
yeah, definitely.
Unalesca as well. I mean, Unalesca is just really not friendly for new players. Just like that, it really flips the script. That boss. It's why it's probably my favorite storyline.
I don't think it's as much the battle. I mean, obviously, you're always going to get in battles an area where, oh shit, did that actually happen? I've just been KO'd all at once. But I think what makes people annoyed with Unalesca is the fact that you got a 5-minute cutscene before it that you got to keep going through every time you do lose, and it's like, oh come on, man, just roll it on.
Absolutely.
I love the story, but how many times have I got to see Oren do his thing?
Yeah, exactly. That's absolutely right. Yeah, but I mean, it's just, I think for me, like, what's I don't know. For you, what was it like when, let's say, you've played the game, you've completed it? How did that transition into basically what it's become today, where like you just want to just keep playing it, where like just enjoying the game turns into like a genuine passion and like a deep interest in the game? So how did you make that transition, do you think?
When I got the game, I kind of joined. That's when I joined Game FAQs or Game Facts, however you want to call it.
Yeah.
And obviously, back in the day, it was really, really popular board. It was always in the top 10 of the most used boards on the site at the time. And it was like that for about 10 years, to be honest with you.
Yes, it was hugely active.
It was. In fact, it only dwindled, I think, once it got ported to the PS3 when it came out as the HD version. Once it did that, it then got a separate board for PS3, PS4, Xbox, I think, as well, PC, and then everyone just at the time, I just thought, keep it all on one site. No need to make 6 different sites, and as soon as he split it, that was it. It kind of went downhill, and it was hardly anyone on it. But going back to your question, during the earlier days, I kind of just talking to some of the old vets. I don't know whether you remember them, like Sensory and people like that, the old Mace and Gangster L and Jobber and all that. And I used to just talk to some of them about the mechanics, about the accuracy, strength, defense. Because I knew nothing at the time. Obviously, you're gonna start not knowing anything, and it just interested me. I don't know why it interested me. I just got in because it seemed so in depth.
Sure.
Everything about the game was so in depth, from the mechanics behind it to the hidden affections, hidden quotes, and all the different hidden aspects of the game. So I just kind of felt, you know what, I'm just interested in this. I'm going to look into it. And as no one had many answers for me, I thought I'll just start delving into it. And I think one of the earlier, this was before I started hacking as such. This was before I got hold of the Ultimania guides.
Right.
This was back in the day when I actually bought myself an Action Replay version 2, which is the old cheat devices, if you remember.
Yes.
I think the Game Shark was the American equivalent, and I think it was more popular, the Action Replay, over the Europe and England. What I tended to do, I thought it was just something to do with accuracy at first. So I kind of thought, according to all these guides you read on the internet, all you're seeing is everyone's accuracy is 0. How the hell are they hitting me?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I'm like, what gives here? And someone, I think it was Sensory actually posted a picture of, I think it was a Killer Bee from the Ultimania guide, and he said that every single move has its own accuracy stat. It doesn't go off your core accuracy.
Yeah.
So I kind of like, that's interesting. And I think at the time it was 100, something like that. So I thought, right, I'm going to actually look. It's a bit anarchic, but at the time I thought, I'm just going to look into it because no one else has looked into it or documented it. So I just got my Action Replay out, found codes that would give me max stats, worked out that if I edited the last couple of digits, I could give myself any stat I wanted.
Right.
I just set myself up at, say, 50 evasion, got hit half the time. Set myself up at 75, got hit some of the time. Set myself up at 80, and so on, until I painstakingly went through every single evadable attack and literally got myself a list of accuracy values. And by the time I finished it, I got hold of the Ultimania guide, cross-referenced it, and I was a bang on every single one of it. But it must have took countless hours I mean, I kid you not when I say I must have been on it for, not this particular thing, but in total, playtesting about thousands of hours.
That would not surprise me at all.
It was painstakingly, but I quite enjoyed it because it was nice to people who don't like the game or not gamers will turn around and basically say, "You're a sad get." You know what I mean? Get a life. And I'm thinking, right. Well, I've got a life. You know what I mean? It might not be everyone's taste, but hey ho,
of course,
I'm doing what I like doing. I started posting something, and it's like, oh, you're quite clued up on these things. You know what I mean? It just kind of gained from there, and then I just started looking into other aspects that people weren't sure about. And then, like I say, when I got the Ultimania guides, I started doing my own, like looking at the AI and all that, and then comparing it to what I found out. Got more information from the Ultimania guide. I can't speak Japanese or read it, but I can pick out certain things. Obviously, when it came to coming on the emulators, I managed to direct hack the files to compare it to the Ultimania guide and find out any discrepancies there.
Right. But it's interesting that like GameFAQs was something that basically ended up inspiring you to go deeper into the game, because it's a little bit of a similar story for me, but only like, let's say, maybe 4 or 5 years after you did. Because obviously by the time I got to that stage where I was done with playing the game and just like trying to max my stats and beat Dark Aeons or whatever, that kind of thing, it was about 2007 or so. And then it came to a time where I needed to do some deeper research about the game, because I didn't have like a guide or anything. There were questions that I had, things I wanted to find out, and that's how I stumbled across the GameFAQs forum. And I remember like a lot of the names that you mentioned there. Sensory is actually one I don't remember, but I remember like Barrel Thief, Eric T, Mace, Gangster L, Soul Spark.
Soul Spark is another one, Sparky, yeah.
Yeah, there's a bunch of names there. And of course you. So I remember just like, I lurked for a long time on those forums, just reading and just being like, having my mind blown at just how much these people knew about the game that I didn't. And it was so interesting. And I think after that, thankfully I got into it in like the early ages of YouTube. So back then there was like a few people who started to upload some more interesting things, like no sphere grid challenges, or like, I don't know, solo Dark Aeon challenges, that kind of thing. I remember seeing those for the first time, like people like Dark Kefka, Crow132, he had some cool videos. And I was looking into that just like thinking, this is so cool, I'd love to be able to do this as well. And that was also part of what fueled me to go deeper on the game and just like play it more, try new things and that kind of thing. Like that challenge thread on GameFAQs is just legendary. Just it went on for like 40, 50 different like topics, I think, something like that.
But they did different ones, didn't they? You had the general one, then you had single character.
Yeah, I mean, there was enough interest to even split it. Like it was insane.
I mean, do you remember the quizzes on there?
I do, yeah. Like that was.
But they got modded half the time for being off topic, which was kind of contradictory considering you're talking about Final Fantasy X on the general board.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how that happened. And also, I totally agree with you that like once the remaster came out and they split the board, I think that's what eventually ended up killing it, because I remember like when the remaster came out, I'd search for things and it would take me to like the Final Fantasy X remastered forum.
Yeah.
And there I'd look through the names, I'd just have a scroll through and I'd never see anyone I recognized. And it was a bit of a shame because like I know these people have been like, you know, talking about the game and know so much about the game, and like I think this whole splitting of the board kind of killed that community, which was a shame really.
I used to really enjoy the quizzes on it though. I never really participated myself in it because people always found it was kind of unfair.
To be honest, it was, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when you're talking about mechanics sort of thing, I mean, I don't know everything about the game, and I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who know just as much, or even stuff I don't know.
Sure.
At the time, it was a case of, oh, he knows everything about it, which I didn't, but to be honest, I did know a lot, but just the way it went.
I think for me, like when I was on the forums and I'd see you post, like the image I had of you was either you knew something or you had the means to find out. So like for me, you were like the guy that had like ultimate VIP access to everything about Final Fantasy. So that was my perception of you, and well, obviously it's not too far from the truth, but like that's what I used to think when I used to read the forums and see you post on there and that kind of thing.
I think I just got lucky being passionate about the game.
Absolutely. I mean, I think for me a lot of it was also about, I don't know if it's the same for you, but based on what you were talking about, you seem to have like an extra interest in the mechanical side of it. For me, it was more about obviously like the story, the world, the characters. Like my first reason for wanting to play more was that I just wanted to spend more time in Spira, to be honest. Like anything I could do to basically give me an opportunity or an excuse to play the game more was my initial thing. And then once I found out about like Dark Aeons, I didn't even know they existed. So Dark Aeons, Penance, all of this stuff, I was more interested in like, what are the extra boss battles? What are the extra areas? How can I find these guys? How can I defeat them? And then once that was done, it was like, okay, is there a way to fight these guys again, but with different restrictions? So then I started getting into the challenge thing. So my interest was always a bit more down that side. And I never really spent too much time actually studying mechanics or anything like that. It was more of a like, I try and fight something, and if I got stuck, I try and figure out why, and then maybe kind of work backwards to see what I was missing. But you seem to have always had like an interest in the mechanics and like the way the game actually works in the background.
Yes, I do like the story as well, to be honest. I've always liked the story of the game. Like you said, it's quite a bit of tutorial and very much story driven at the very beginning of the game, which can get a bit boring at times because you see it all the time and you can't skip it. But yeah, I do like the story, and I thought it got very emotional towards the end, to be honest with you. It was very emotional, really touching, especially for the times. Mm-hmm. But I was the same. I didn't actually realise that we had the international version, so to speak, when I first read about it, because obviously the showstopper was Flux for me at first, so I went back to the beginning, started using a guide a little bit, and then as I was going through, I kept checking the board and heard about all these Dark Aeons. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, oh, lucky buggers. You know what I mean? Because I'm thinking when you say the international version, to me, international was abroad from wherever I am.
Sure.
I was quite naive at the early days. And I'm thinking, oh, I must just have plain old vanilla. And then only when I kept reading into it, it was the NA version, which was the plain vanilla one. And everything overseas was the international, or PAL version, as we got direct conversion. I think because it took quite a while for it to come out over here. It got delayed, didn't it, I believe?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't know too much about like the very earliest days of like Final Fantasy X over here. Like when did the PAL version get released, that kind of thing? Because I didn't play until about 2004. I didn't know too much of it. All I knew was obviously that there was the North American version that was kind of nerfed, and then afterwards we got the PAL version, which had what they were missing, basically.
Yeah, I think it come out, was it 1999? I think it originally came out.
I think it's 2001, actually.
Is it?
Yeah, it should be 2001. The first like Japanese version came out.
I'm not sure. Whatever it was, it came out in a particular year, and I think the NA version or the American audience got it in December of that same year. Mm-hmm. And I think we were meant to get it slightly after, but it took over a year, I think, to come out. And by that time, the international version had been done, and we just got a direct copy of the international version.
I mean, that's a huge stroke of luck, to be honest, because I don't know, maybe my entire experience would have been different if it was like the North American version. Like I would have completed the game, and then maybe by the time I even realized that there were Dark Aeons, because at the time, especially in the PS2 days, it was quite difficult to, like, it was more of a hassle to try and play like international versions of games. Yeah. So I probably might have just said, you know what, screw it. I just, you know, I had my fun with this game. I'll move on to something else. I might not have even got into it as much as I did.
I probably might have done the similar thing myself if it weren't for the fact that I kept looking into things and looking into things. The more you look into things, you find something else that you look into, and then you look into that, and it's like a kind of snowball job. You just carry on looking into stuff, and like I said, some people might just think I'm sad. You know, some people might think I'm cool. I don't know.
I think the people listening to this are going to be more in the cool camp than the sad camp. Hopefully.
Oh, you'll always get some negative ones, but you can't please everyone.
I think I experienced that most in when I actually beat No Sphere Grid Dark Anima and I uploaded the video. And obviously I tried to give people like an idea of just how long this thing took me to do. And of course, like, it's one of these things where, you know, for someone that doesn't have that much interest in it, if you read it and you're like, why would someone spend this much time to do this? Like, okay, you know, you beat a boss, but you literally spent like maybe thousands of hours trying to do this. What was the point? And to be honest, it's just one of these things where there is no answer for it. It's just like, well, this is what I wanted to do at the time. You know, everyone's free to do what they wish to do with their time. That's what I wanted to do, and I have no regrets about the time I spent doing that, to be honest.
I find the strange thing is, although I really enjoy reading the them threads, the single character challenges, the NSG challenges, and all that's in between. But I've never actually been one to do a particular NSG or SCC challenge. But when I play the game, I always limit myself to certain restrictions, which means I am kind of playing a kind of challenge in itself.
Right, okay.
I don't customise barring the end game.
Okay, that's interesting.
I'll only use equipment that gets dropped for me. I won't buy from the shops like First Strike and all that, because I find it's very overpowered, basically. So if I get one as a drop, great, I'll use it, no problem. But I won't go out there customising it or buying it unless it's the very end game where you get specialised equipment. And I've always done that. I never use items. I don't use items because I find that they were overpowered with the statuses and things like that. So I always actually restrict myself to do certain things during the game. So technically I do actually challenge myself, but it's a self-imposed challenge rather than a general challenge.
Right, okay. It's interesting because I was going to ask you about that, because I was going to say, like, have you done like some no secret stuff and that kind of thing? But that's interesting. I mean, considering how much you know the game, I would have thought, like, if there was anyone that could really like go crazy on the challenges, it would be you.
Because even sometimes on this mod now, when you're going through it and it's like, oh, I didn't think of that because I never use it when I play through it myself. So the use of items and all that, I think I need to sort something out for the final release, which I have kind of been doing for the version 2.6, which technically be the final one, unless I do find out how to properly mod the AI. If I can find that, then I'll carry on, but at the moment I'm kind of like now up to the limits of my modding potential, so to speak.
So let's start to dive a bit more into the mod itself. So from my perspective, I remember this mod. Honestly, I don't remember if you contacted me or if I contacted you. I probably contacted you like years ago when the mod was really, like, you were first working on it, to say, like, you know, can I have a go with the mod? But I think it coincided with a time when I was really starting to be more active on YouTube, and I'd already done a lot of Final Fantasy X stuff, and I think I needed to focus on other content. So it was something that I put off for a long time, and I think over time I just never really ended up having a chance to play it. So talk to us about like the origins of the mod. When did you decide to do it? Why did you decide to do it? What was your vision for it? Because I've told people, like, obviously throughout the playthrough, I've tried my best to say, so this is what P-Birdman's trying to do, this is his aim, but I think it'd be nice to hear it through like your own words as well.
Well, it started from, like you say, when you finish doing like all the Dark Aeons and everything, and you complete the game, it's like, I wish it was a bit harder, you know, because at the end of it you seem unfulfilled, and then when you talk to people on the sites, it's like, oh, they're not that hard really. Once you get up to a certain level, you just whip the backside. So obviously from there, with what I knew about the game, I kind of thought, well, can I not make it a bit harder then, and potentially release some sort of mod? Not that I'm not a programmer or anything, so I don't really have the insights to properly mod a game, but I just got lucky on how I did find out what was what, and it was fortunate that, yeah, I don't know whether you remember the translation mod that I attempted for Final Fantasy X2.
I don't think so, actually. That's not one I'm familiar with.
Yeah, I kind of did, because this was before I knew it was getting released on PS3. This was going back to probably about 2008, maybe, something like that. 2009. I kind of thought, I wish I could play the international version of Final Fantasy X2 with all the Creature Colosseum and all the extras, the last mission. Yeah. So fortunately there was some people on the site at the time who could read a bit of Japanese and said they'll translate some stuff for me.
Ah, okay.
That was nice of them to do that. And there was also another guy on the site at the time which was a bit more of a modder, and he actually did some sort of very small mod, and I downloaded it and I thought, his file looks different from mine, and when I compared them, he's uncompressed the files and it worked. So I tried doing it, it didn't work, and then he explained to me, no, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. So he allowed me to use his tools, or some of his tools, and it went from there. So I kind of like was able to decompress files, find out what I needed to find out, locate things in files. It's not the easiest of things, but I knew how to do it, and I thought if it weren't for him, I think he was called Farlow, I think he was called, something like that. If you actually, anyone who's got the translation mod will actually, in fact, you'll probably have it in your README file. I'll always credit him because it was actually his tool.
Really?
That actually does it. So without that tool, this mod wouldn't be possible. So I've always thanked him for that piece of equipment, so to speak, software, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was basically just because I wanted to have more of a challenge on it, and people were always complaining that it was too easy. It gets a bit repetitive, a bit boring. So, but the only problem is when you start doing things like this, you've got to try and find the balance of, is it too easy, is it too hard? You don't want to go too far, but then again, you don't want to do too little.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, how do I go about doing that? Because as you very well pointed out in your post on your videos, you've actually said it's my interpretation of one man's look at how the game could be or should be, which is correct because I was doing it based on my experience. And then, of course, when people start playing it, you start realising where you've messed up. So then you've got to keep patching it.
It's one of these things where it's an impossible thing because obviously you've got an entire spectrum of people like finding how difficult they find something, and like obviously for me, I've always said I don't know how good. On the one hand, I think I'm a good guinea pig for this because I know the game well and I can kind of I can keep up with the difficulty for the most part and maybe like show things in a different way to what a newer player could. But then again, how well do I represent the average person that could be playing this mod? That's something I don't know either. So it's like, for you, what was your, like, let's just say out of 1 to 10, if 10 is just like an insanely difficult, like high level, no sphere grid kind of challenge, how hard did you actually want this to be, like in your own vision?
Well, it was never intended on being a hard mod, so to speak. Where you can find out, I mean, there was a mod, I think, called Punishment for the PS2 version, I believe. And that was basically just HP was increased quite a lot. A few stats were increased, a few resistances were increased. So it was basically just massive amount of HP.
Yeah.
I've never actually played that mod. But from what I can believe, I think there were a few other little tweaks as well, but it was mainly just like extra HP and all that. So to me, that could be quite a hard mod at times if it's just massive amounts of HP you've got to grind through. So I wanted to go away from that and actually do other things on top of... Of course, increased HP is going to be a given. Increased stats, resistances. I then wanted to change some attacks to... Because I found that statuses weren't used to the potential, in my opinion, on vanilla. So I tried to include a lot more statuses in the attacks I created.
Sure.
As well as, this is the idea as well behind the resistances, as you probably found out on your playthrough. It starts off low and progressively gets higher as you go through the game. So it forces you to use more stronger attacks. But I didn't realise, of course, that the percentage of failure was going to be a really great amount. So it makes using statuses no point, basically. So that is an issue I will resolve because I agree with you on that one.
I mean, statuses for me is a very difficult thing to mod because it's very hard to find that balance that we've been talking about. Because on the one hand, obviously we know from like the original game, let's say something like the TKO, for example, can even make like a no sphere grid run quite easy once you start using it.
Yeah.
But it's like, but you don't want to make it so that if you make it too difficult, then you have no reason to even try using statuses. And then it just becomes this simple, like, I've got to do as much damage as possible and not use my statuses. So it's like, how do you keep a balance of keeping the statuses useful but not having them break the game? That's one of the most challenging things, I think.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons as well behind the... I think when you got to the Thunder Plains the first time and I thought Death Touch, I thought it was quite easy just to go down there and between 2 or 3 hits you've killed a strong enemy. So, I'll lessen the potency of the actual Death Touch. And if that's not enough, I'll just give a little resistance as well to the enemies, and then it becomes 2 OTT. So it's very hard to find the proper balance between what I should be doing and what I should really leave alone.
Yeah.
But it's the only way, though, I'm going to find out and make the best mod possible that I can do is by people like yourself, though, who know what they're doing and can give not just positive, but critically and negative feedback if needed. If it helps progress the mod, then that's fine. No problem with that. I mean, that's the whole idea of this. It is a beta test.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've said a few times in the mod already, but I mean, the fact that obviously I get to be a part of this mod in that way, where we get to talk about things. I mean, it's very rare that you have a mod that's basically kind of still in development, and as a player, you get to actually kind of help to develop the mod and make it better, and give your feedback and have your feedback listened to and that kind of thing. So for me, it's just been this really unique experience, because for someone like me that's played Final Fantasy X for so long and so many times in so many different ways, there's always this like struggle to try and find a new way to enjoy the game, because obviously it's my favorite game of all time. I want to keep playing it. I want to keep discovering things about it. I want to keep enjoying it. But obviously as time goes on, that gets more and more difficult before you start to tread over old ground. But this mod, like this whole situation and being able to work with you on it, has been like a new lease of life for the game. And like you think about it differently. I don't know, you play differently. You get to influence how other people might be able to experience the game. So for me, it's been amazing to be able to play the mod in this way. And obviously, thank you again for like giving me the opportunity to test it like this and to upload it. It's been amazing.
Well, I mean, obviously, I appreciate the fact that you're actually displaying it out there as well. So it's actually giving it out to the public, sort of thing. So that's something I don't do. So by you doing that is like kind of like exposing it. But sure. I have actually give it, or previous versions of it, I have actually give to other people. And they did. Some of them did record a little bit. I forget his name. I think it might have been Voidling. I think.
Right. I think I've seen Chaos N record some stuff.
Yeah, I don't. That's not really the mod, but he has recorded a few things. He's another one who's on Game Facts, who's a good poster. I think it was Voidling. I think if you put FFX Challenge version 2.3 or something like that in YouTube, you'll come up with his videos. And he did an old one, obviously version 2.3. This was before I modded the sphere grid.
Right.
I kind of thought it's a similar sort of thing, progression, just do it like that. He got so far in, and it was going the way I planned it, and the battles were like half an hour, something like that. And then all of a sudden, I didn't expect him to do all Blitzball, where he basically used the spheres to jump to other grids to overpower. And then every single boss he was fighting took about 5 minutes, if that. So it's kind of like, well, that defeats the purpose of the mod, so I can't really comment on it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He was got to like Defender X, like your boss battles, because obviously of the limitations, yours are taking about an hour, and that's for yourself to go through it. Yeah. But I mean, this guy was just going through it in 5 minutes, just getting double cast flare by Defender X or something. It's like, yeah, I mean, that's why I thought I'll release the next one and I'll mod the grid and get rid of some prizes or switch them around so you can't jump from one path to the other. Before, I think I did it so you had to get to the airship first, what defeats Sin, and get to that part of the game. Then I'll give access to like level 3 key spheres and things like that. So anywhere you previously could get a level 3 key sphere, you now can't get a level 3 key sphere.
Yeah.
You probably realise that yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the one that you could get for the Chocobo racing, I've changed that one and give a different prize instead. So I tried to do it so you have to stay down your own path. Obviously that limited Kamari to a certain degree because he was stuck to the middle, which is why I lessened 2 entrances to level 2, so he could get an extension to his path. And you could either take him on an all-rounder trip or a magic trip, because at the time I thought magic was more powerful in the early game.
It is, in the early game.
And I do mean to respond to that as well in the later game, because I do agree that it's getting all Orin again. So it will be. I mean, you've probably tried a couple of the patches now where I've rejigged a couple of the enemies, so it's more fruitful to use Orin on some, Lulu on another. But without actually modding the actual formula, which I'm not saying is impossible, but I'd need to really, really dig in and try testing it, because the way I mod things, it's really hit and miss, basically. It's just brute force I've got to use to change things. I usually can do a good job, but every now and again I just have to go, you know what, I can't really do much about it at the moment, and it'll have to just stay the way it is. But
so, I mean, for clarity, when you say changing the formula, you mean in terms of the magic versus physical damage formula, right?
yeah, the actual, not just what formula the attack uses, I can do that, but actually, for instance, like with the physical formula, let's say, the first part of it is like strength times strength times strength. No, stat times stat times stat. And with magic, it starts off differently.
Right.
If I can actually find where that is in the form, in the actual data, I could potentially change it a little bit to make it a bit more potent.
Right.
But so it is quite a complex thing to do.
So what about in terms of like, obviously after, I think it was like 2013, the remastered version came out, and now we have the Steam version. And of course, one of the things that people ask me all the time is like, you know, this is on the PS2 version. Is there any way it could be on the Steam version? So just to clarify that whole thing.
I believe it can be done on the Steam. I think the PS3 and PS4 is quite complex to do it on their system, because I think it also includes you needed to jailbreak the system, I believe.
Right.
So people have actually said if you do mod on the next generation machine, just do it on Steam. It'll be a lot easier. And I do know you can get access to the files you need a lot easier on the Steam than you can on PS3, PS4. Again, without a modified console. So it is some. I am actually meaning to get. I haven't got it on the PC at the moment. I am actually thinking of getting it, both of them. So it's definitely something that I will look at in the future.
But when it comes to like the actual like the data within the files, I assume that the remaster is too different from the PS2 version that you can't like quite literally sort of copy and paste whatever you've done in the PS2 version. You'd have to basically start from scratch, right?
I would assume so, yes. I don't know whether the PS3, being that it's a bigger disc size, it may be all uncompressed. I'm not sure. I've never actually looked into the actual files of the PS3 or PS4. It could be all uncompressed, which means it could be quite easy. If it's compressed, it might use different compressions, which I'm not 100% on that. So I just stick with what I know at the moment, which is the PS2. And as it happens, it's on an emulator, so it's very easy to get access to. Yeah,
I think the emulator is definitely what makes it way more possible. If it was like, if we didn't have a way to play it on emulator, then it would make the mod a lot more restrictive, and a lot less people would be able to play it.
I mean, you can actually play it on the PS2 because I have included an ESR patch in there. Again, it's not my actual patch, but it was just something I've included with it, that if you wanted to play it properly on a PS2 console, you can do it by using the patch, but you'd have to look online how to properly use that patch. It is included, but not the actual tutorial.
Right, okay.
But I have done it myself, and it does work. The only issues I had with the earlier patches is that some of the loading times when you went into battle was a little bit longer than normal. But it was loading up the uncompressed files. But other than that, it did work. So it is possible to play it on a standard PS2, but it's best playing it on an emulator, I think.
Yeah, I mean, especially as I get later into the game as well, I think you would have noticed as well that because you have the option to disable the frame limiting on the emulator, you can get through like grindy things a lot more easily. It's like the Steam version's ×4 speed, but you have access to that for the PS2 version, which is a lifesaver as well. So when it comes to like the modding stuff, what's been like some of the biggest challenges, and how's that resulted in terms of doing things that you wanted to do but you weren't able to due to restrictions?
Well, I don't know about challenges, but the more frustrating elements of the modding must come trying to make certain enemies use certain attacks that you want them to use, but they can't use. Not that they can't use it; they can use it, but some of them they can't use because it hangs the game afterwards. Must be to do with the animation phase. But some of them they can use, and it's fine. But the camera angles are absolutely hideous.
Right.
So some things I wanted to do, for instance, as you've already posted the Seymour on this battle, there was some attacks I wanted to use for him. There was loads I tried. You probably remember you're taking ages for me to get back to you with the updated patch, because it just I did have extra stuff going on in real life as well, but every single time I tried to get him a certain way, I hit a roadblock with bloody camera angles. or something like that. And there was actually a couple of good attacks that he could use. It looked really, really good. And when he got to the end of it, I thought, yes, I'm using it. And then when it finished, it's like, oh shit, no, I'm not. It just
when you say when you finish, does it mean like once the move finishes, the camera gets stuck on like a weird angle or something? Or
some of them, like for instance, I try getting him to use Meteor to give him a Natus feel as well. As you well know, he's got his own attacks. He's got some of Flux's attacks. I wanted to make it kind of like a myriad of attacks from CityMorgue himself.
I really like that idea. I think with Omnis, I think that was a really smart way to deal with it.
That was the original idea, and I thought I'm going to try and do it like that. And every time I used a certain move, I thought it's looking okay, and then the camera just sticks on him while the attack takes place, so you don't actually see anything by the numbers in the corner of the screen. And I'm thinking it looks stupid, and you might have noticed that on Spiral of Death. It does it on that one, but I thought I like that move so much, I wanted to include it.
I think Spiral of Death is a really good move. I think we first saw it with Flux, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I remember against Flux, I think one of the best things about that battle was the fact that Spiral of Death was in it, because as you would have seen as well, obviously for me, I don't know how everyone else plays, but for me, I always try to, my first priority is to try and tank the battle. So am I going to put myself in a position where no one's going to get KO'd in this battle? Because obviously then I can benefit from things like cheer and focus and all that kind of stuff. But when you introduce something like Spiral of Death, well, either the character's going to die or they're going to be in doom status. So all of the hard work that you've done to tank up could be for nothing. So there's that constant fear of having a character that might have all of their buffs erased and you have to start again. So I think like moves like Spiral of Death were definitely really good, because there's no way you can protect against doom.
That was kind of the idea of the attack when I thought of it. I thought, if you notice, I probably tried using quotes as well from what they say. So people have mentioned that it's Sin's like a Spiral of Death. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of thinking, well, it's a CityMorgue battle, so use that type of terminology in it, peaceful slumber. It kind of relates to an actual comment rather than the actual move itself. And obviously, peaceful slumber had sleep to it.
Is peaceful slumber, is the animation for it like an ice breath attack that you use for it?
I think if I remember, yes, I think it was actually Adamantoise's fire breath attack.
I
think that's what it was. Looking back, it's been quite a while since I did it now, but I think it was that sort of breath attack.
I'm just thinking, like, from your perspective, that side of it must be really fun, but really difficult to implement as well. So you've got to sit there and you've got to be like, okay, what should I call this attack? And then which animation do I want it to use? Where can I find that in the data? How can I put that in? Is the camera angle going to work? Blah, 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 blah. It just feels like such a difficult process just for one attack.
It does sometimes. When you're trying to do something quickly, it's like, oh, can I be bothered doing it? Can I just give him another attack that is already existing? Or can I make it unique and spend that little bit more time? But the more effort you put in, obviously, the longer it takes.
Absolutely.
And obviously, I don't want to slow your progression down. But then again, I don't want to give you a half-hearted job, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I think having played through the mod, my favorite thing, of course, has been the fact that there's new attacks in here. Because I think when I think of modding, a lot of the time I feel like the simplest, most basic thing to do is, like you mentioned before, just give it more HP, give it more resistance, increase its strength or whatever. Just simple, changing some stats and stuff around to make life more difficult. But I think when you introduce like these new attacks, new animations, new attack names, all of this stuff, it just makes it feel so much more like you're playing a real, like, different version of the game. And that's something I'm really glad that you put the effort into, because that's, for me, like, that's the single best thing I think about this mod, is just seeing these new attacks, and especially when they happen at unpredictable times. Like, my favorite has to be the Overdrive Sin sneeze attack, which I thought was hilarious. That was just so funny. Like, it's supposed to be like a serious battle, like, you know, race against time, you got to defeat Sin. But I just burst out laughing when I saw that. It was just genius.
Well, that actual move I actually put in quite a while ago, to be honest. But I must admit, I did actually change the mechanics of it just for your battle, because I thought the original, the idea was the same, but the idea was the damage was based on max MP.
Okay, right.
Obviously, if you had, say, Una in the front line, she'll have something like, I don't know, 150 MP or something. So it did it like a power of 240, so it would be something like 15 times whatever her MP is will be the damage.
Wow. Okay.
And obviously, to someone like Tidus who's got a lot less, the damage will be a lot less. But then I thought to myself, I'm going to be honest, I thought, let's slap him in the face here. Let's just change it all. Just have it as 100% HP attack. Just get in there, think I'm going to kick your ass. First attack, I'm dead. But obviously, you got to be able to survive it. So then you're thinking, how do I go about what parts of the is it physical? Is it magical? So I thought at first, let's do it physical, but if you do it physical, it's very easily defended against. Just defend, and then you've reduced it by 50% as it is. So I thought, let's just up it a little bit by doing magical. Yeah. Therefore, you have to prepare, unless you come in with magic defense plus whatever, which most times you probably won't do.
No, yeah.
So it'll just be really shell that you've got to do to reduce the damage. So I just expecting it, go in there and get wiped out and go, you complete and utter beep.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that kind of stuff is really cool because those are the moments when you really feel like you're playing a mod. Like you go into that and you see an attack you've never seen before and you get wiped out and you're like, wait a minute, that's not what's supposed to happen. And it's just so different from what you've ever played before. Like even in a hardcore challenge run, you're not going to get wiped out on the first turn against Overdrive Sin. It just doesn't happen. So when you see that happen, it was a really cool moment. I think it was a good battle to do it again because there's no real build up to it in terms of cutscenes. You can just restart it quickly, so you don't mind getting a game over or two against a boss like Overdrive Sin.
I mean, it's like the toxin attack as well. I thought that's been mentioned many times in the game, Sin's toxin.
True.
So rather than just have a generic gazed attack, which it is officially called in the game data, why not just call it Sin's toxin and have all the statuses potentially inflicted on you? You know what I mean? It's that sort of thing. I think let's change that. That's got to be changed, definitely.
I think Overdrive Sin was a really good battle. Like thinking back on it, like that first the sneeze attack, and of course the statuses that we had to deal with too. Plus, obviously trying to get the damage in. I think that was a fun battle. It was good like adrenaline because Final Fantasy X obviously because it's turn based. Like unless you really like get to a critical stage in the battle, a lot of the time it doesn't really have that sense of urgency. But I think like Overdrive Sin was a really good battle for that. So I think you did a good job with it.
But it's just a bit of more of a bugger when it comes to the endurance part, which are like Sin's fin, Sin's head. You want to go so far, but you don't want to go too much to defeat the first two. Take say half an hour to defeat the first two, and then get obliterated by the third part.
Exactly.
So then you think, am I making it too easy by not advancing him a lot? So that in that situation, it can be quite a bit of a daunting experience when you're trying to get the best out of a mod.
Of course. I mean, I think for you, one of the most difficult things surely must be that you, as the modder, basically, you have to try and outsmart every single potential player that's playing.
Basically.
Because Final Fantasy X any Final Fantasy game is a game of loopholes where there's almost always something you can do to really swing things in your own favor. And you have to be the guy that's always there trying to block every single pathway to give you an easy win. So that it just seems like a really difficult thing to do, really.
Yeah, that was one of the first points of the mod to try and break any loopholes. That included Aeons being super overpowered all the way through the game. The issue with, say, Poison Seymour, that was a very easy way of getting through it. So I have seen comments about why not just make him immune to it rather than do what I did. But again, it's kind of like a little bit of a slap in the face in that way as well.
Yeah.
You know what, go on, waste your turn poisoning him, give him a little bit of resistance. You might waste 3 turns trying to do it, and then when you do it, you think, yes, he's dead. 0. Again, you bastard. Well, what can I say?
Exactly.
That's the whole point of it.
Exactly. You got to have that sort of stuff, man.
Yeah. It's a kind of little bit of a devious thing by me, but you know what I mean? I could just make him immune to it, but that wouldn't be any fun.
Yeah, no, I don't have any problems with that, to be honest. I think, like I've said a few times, obviously we've talked about it at length anyway, but just for people listening in as well, it's just I think looking back on it, the only real thing that still sticks in my mind is just that some areas had random encounters, like smaller ones, that because they had status resistance and they had fairly high defense and fairly high HP, you would need like 5 7, 8 attacks to take them down, and that would really drag out the amount of time you would have to take to get from A to B. So obviously the place where we talked about this the most, I think, was the climb up Gagazet, and that kind of stuff, balancing that kind of thing out where you still have an element of challenge, but you still kind of keep things going because there's such a high encounter rate in Gagazet anyway. Once the battles get grindy too, it's like when you put those two things together, Gagazet just becomes a really frustrating place to try and get through.
Yeah, the thing about Gagazet and them sort of areas is that yours is the very first proper testing of it, because all the other people who have played it before you seem to have give up after about Thunder Plains, Macalania area. They said they'll carry on playing it at some point, but I think probably it got a bit too hard. I mean, but that was a lesser version, so...
Right.
Like I said, as you're quite an experienced player who loves doing challenges, obviously you're more equipped to deal with these challenges. So even though I'm trying to make it harder for you, am I potentially making it too hard for the average player? So it's very... But I can see your point, because when you first got to the Thunder Plains and thought, yeah, it weren't too bad. So when I give you the update, it's like, well, let's make it harder. Let's make the elements like they are in Final Fantasy X2. Give them maybe not necessarily a weakness, but susceptibility to one of them, and then make them immune to the other three. But then, will that take too long? So it's always it's like with the modding aspect. It's always a hit and miss. You've just got to keep trying it until you get it right, and it can take a bit of time, unfortunately.
In terms of, like, obviously up until now, like you said, your mod has always been very private. Like, I remember we could PM you in GameFAQs to, like, request the mod if we wanted it, and you maybe sent it out to people that you're close with on GameFAQs. But, like, when it comes to actually seeing someone like me upload it, hearing me commentate over it, reading all the comments, what's that been like to see your mod get, like, this exposure on YouTube, and for so many people to be watching it and to check out, like, all the feedback you've received and that kind of thing?
Well, of course, it's great. I love it. I mean, many kudos to yourself for doing that, you know what I mean? It's like, this is why whenever anyone has asked me for it recently, by all means, they're welcome to play it. I've got, I've not done this just so they can't play it. Of course they can play it. But as I always say to them, you're more than welcome to download it, but I'm obviously giving Burke the first refusal on the battles, basically. You know what I mean? He's taken the time to expose this mod. You know, you've dedicated to it. You've not stopped playing it. I mean, you took a break here and there, which is fine, but you carried on, and you've done a really good job on it. So, obviously, I want to make the best mod as I possibly can. So, the later I can release this, as far as I'm concerned, the better. Although I don't want to release it too late, so people get bored of waiting. But there's not much I can do. I mean, I know we discussed about maybe releasing a pre-patch. Like maybe release a story version without the arena in it, without the main bosses until you've played them. It's possible I could do something like that, but by the time I've actually done it anyway, would it be any point? Because you probably would have been virtually all the way through the game anyway. So I've still got to put bits and bobs together for the final release. So it's something that I could do. We'll just have to see how far I get in the modding aspect and see how far you get in your recording to see where we go. It definitely is doable, and if it's the only way to get it really quickly, I will do that. But I don't want to break the game for people. I'd rather give them a complete game rather than, oh, you go there, access that, it'll crash on you, basically. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you. I mean, for me, it was more a case of I'm trying to look at the timeline. I mean, I'm trying to remember when I released the first video. I mean, it was like... You
started in September, I think, or August, around that area.
Yeah, so I mean, it's been like 9 or 10 months, and I think game clock-wise, I think I'm like 85 hours in, 85 to 90 hours in, and we've released, I think, I recently finished editing the final episode of the story, and I think it was episode 43, I think. So now I'm thinking ahead, and I'm like, well, I've got tons of these things still to come. I have no idea what my game clock is going to be like by the time I'm finished, because obviously we've got more difficult battles coming. So if, let's say, it takes me 200 hours to finish everything, then we might not be able to complete this playlist for like another year or so. So I thought, instead of making people wait another year, for those that are impatient and want to have a go at this, if we could give them a version that doesn't have like the post game to it, then that should tide them over for a good year anyway until we're ready to...
Yeah, like I said, it definitely is doable. It definitely is doable to do that. But where possible, I don't want to give a broken game. But if it gets to that point, I will definitely do that because, like I said, I don't want people just waiting. I mean, they've done well in waiting at the moment as it is. So I'm doing it for the fans, so I want the fans to play it.
Yeah.
I don't want anything back from them, you know what I mean? So, but I do want to get it out there before either someone else does it or they get bored of it.
Yeah, I mean, because there's only a certain pace that we can go at. I mean, because of course I've got other content that I'm working on literally daily. You know, you've got your day job, you've got your own life, that kind of thing. I think weekly episodes has worked pretty well because if you look at the timeline, I've not had to take a break. I've literally had content every single week from the mod. But if I tried to upload more regularly, there would have been periods where I'd be like, oh, sorry guys, P-Birdman's working on a new patch. We won't have a video for a month or something like that. So I think this format, in terms of like the pacing and giving us time to work on it, I think has worked pretty well. So I'll probably continue to do that moving forward.
Well, I like to think that the next patch will actually give you a bit of a challenge. So I'm hoping it works out exactly how I want it to work out. I'm not saying there's not been any hiccups at the moment, but I am close to alpha testing it to make sure the key points work.
Mm-hmm. Of course, when it comes to like the whole testing side of it, I mean, it's pretty obvious to say, but obviously I still want you to mention that side of it anyway. You play test everything that you've done, and you've obviously, I assume you would have fought everything that you've modded, right? I mean, how does that side of it work?
I try to test as much as I can. I won't say I test every little thing because this is the whole idea of beta testing. Just to find out I try and do the key points to make sure the battles are doable. Not every little nut and cranny that you can get into. Like I don't use every single character, every Aeon, every this, that and the other against them. It's like the issue you had with the confused Gemini. It crashed the game, but when I tried it originally, it was fine, and then I found out that it was only when they were together that it crashed the game. So if you did it when they were on their own, it was fine. But for some reason, whether it's to do with the AI, it could possibly be something in there that it doesn't understand. They're both being confused. So I've had to just basically remove it and make them immune to it. But other characters or other enemies, as far as I'm aware, there is no issues with them. But again, we only find out by, like yourself, coming back to me saying, look, this happened, I could look into it and try and fix it.
So when it comes to, obviously, your own mod, I've still got a lot of really difficult battles to come. But, like, have you fought the Dark Aeons and Penance, and have you defeated them, like, with your own, let's say, save file when you were testing?
I have not battled them and defeated them, to be perfectly honest with you. I have actually tested some things out with them. So it's completely virgin territory, this is basically going into the battles. I'm assuming they're doable, but again, as I try and make it a bit more complex, it's possible I might have to tweak it as you play through it, but that's the whole idea of the mod and what you're testing. So at the moment you're doing a fantastic job, so you probably won't have much problems with them, but I'm hoping you do.
I think when it comes to the Dark Aeons, I think the biggest problem has always been that there is almost no sweet spot for them. So it's like you come in, let's say, where you're not prepared and you don't have the stats, and they will absolutely destroy you. But if you do come in with the right stats and the right preparations, then it's almost a formality. So I don't know how you're going to manage to find more of a middle ground for those guys.
I have managed to do a couple of tricks with them. So over the space, I don't want to really reveal what it is, but over the space of time, the longer it takes you to defeat them, the harder it will become. That's all I can say about that.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to... I mean, there's some interesting things happening, because obviously another thing that is very interesting about this mod, and something I really didn't expect, was when I got to Remium Temple and I won the race, and then I opened the chest and there was like this red text, and I was like, what the hell's going on here? Like, is it that kind of mod? Like, what? So when it comes to that, I don't know how I'm going to get the mirror and the celestial weapons, how all that's going to work. Have you tweaked any of like how to actually get the celestial weapons, or is that all the same?
No. The weapons are the same. The weapons and the sigils I've not really, or the crest I've not really touched, to be honest. For the simple fact that I've changed the cloudy mirror. You can't do anything until you get that, and by the time you get that, I want you to get the celestial weapons, basically. So there's no real need to tweak that. I mean, I'd love to turn around and say, yeah, I've changed the Lulu's Venus sigil and made it 999 dodges you need to do rather than 200, but I think that would just be like, up yours. I think that would basically be a polite way of saying it. Or get minus 10 seconds on the chocobo raise. I don't know if it's doable. But I think that some of them are tactical enough that once you get the mirror, just go and get them, basically.
Okay. I mean, in terms of the celestial weapons, then, I mean, I don't know, it might end up being a spoiler in that sense. If it is, just don't tell me. But, I mean, is there a stage where you would like me to have it? So let's say, for example, the monster arena, you're basically going to have to do it without the celestial weapons. But once you get to Dark Aeon territory, celestial weapons are still the best way to go. Is that how it's looking in the mod?
Originally, the idea was to go through the arena with regular weapons. Just so, because if you can go through the arena from the get-go with celestial weapons, there is no point in giving any defense stat to anything, because it's wasted time, basically, barring overdrives, which don't regularly get used anyway. So the original idea was, battle through normally till a certain point to where you can probably get the celestial weapons and then go gung-ho with it. Do you know what I mean? Because then I want you to get celestial weapons for the Dark Aeons. Because without them, you'd have probably no chance. And that was the original idea, but because I'm kind of tweaking it a bit, I need to find the best time to give the celestial weapons, because the original idea now has gone. So I'm kind of making it a bit more tougher, a bit more complex during the arena. But I won't say any more on it because you'll get to it soon anyway. But I'm hoping you'll enjoy it. If it is too much, I'll have to go back and maybe tweak it a bit. But that's the idea, and this is why I said do not go to the arena just yet. By all means, capture. Capturing is not affected in any way, shape, or form. But actually going and speaking to the guy himself, try not to do it until I've released the patch.
I'm thinking in terms of like what I'm going to do next. Obviously, the Omega Ruins is obviously somewhere I'm interested in. I will probably just go straight in there with my endgame file. So whatever I had before I fought Brass's Fine Leon, I'll probably head in with that. Give Omega Ruins a go, and I'm assuming, my assumption is I might be able to defeat Ultimate Weapon, but I'm pretty sure with these stats I probably can't defeat Omega Weapon. So once that happens, then I'll probably spend some time monster capturing. And because I don't know if you ever saw my original Final Fantasy X walkthrough, the one on the channel.
I've seen quite a lot of it. I actually enjoyed it, to be honest, as well as the extras he did after, like the storyline boss guide, the monster arena guides, and all them.
Awesome. So yeah, I'm planning on following the same kind of trajectory that I did with that for starters, just like as a natural pattern. Because obviously, by capturing 10 of every fiend, you end up obviously getting some kind of stat boost from that anyway. And once I have that stat boost, then that can be like my next tier of stats, and then I can try to take on some of the monster arena and see how I do. But then I think once I get to a stage where like naturally I've kind of reached what I can reach without having to farm for stats, then it's going to be difficult to decide, well, how much farming shall I do? What kind of stats should I get to without completely breaking things? So that's going to be interesting, I think.
Don't forget about Mr. Rachu.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. We definitely need a rematch. I mean,
that was kind of funny when I first saw it. Okay, wow.
I think Ochu was a particularly good one because I think, again, it's for me a lot of like this whole modding thing is just about the feeling that you get when you're playing, and I think because you wisely started off the mod quite simple, like it doesn't really come at you very hard at the beginning, and by the time you get to Killiker, things aren't really feeling that different. You're like, okay, I mean, he's made it a little bit more interesting, but so far there's not really much of a wow factor. And then you see Ochu and you're like, okay, he's probably made Ochu a little more difficult, that kind of thing. And then you trigger it off, and then just this absolute madness happens. It's chaos. and then you're like, oh shit, okay, so this mod is actually something really like different, and I'm going to be seeing a lot more interesting things as I move forward.
Yeah.
So introducing that idea that you're going to be encountering some really interesting stuff moving forward. That
was quite a late addition to the mods. That I kind of thought, you know what, I want something different in there. So, you know, in case of just something that you, rather than just go in there and beat straight away, you know, come back when you're a bit more powerful. Basically, it's not actually a dark Aeon as such, but it's just like a nasty version of a plant fiend of Mandragora, basically. But it's really fun, I reckon. I reckon you'll get.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely. I mean, even like the little touch of it actually having the palette swap, like it has that transition. I thought it was really nice. And
I kind of enjoyed as well when you was on the ship for the first time and got, is it Sin's Fin battle, and when it moved and thought, damn, I've just been confused.
Yeah. That was that. That was an interesting one. I mean, there's been a few moments like that. I think I remember Defender X with like I tried to use Riku's overdrive.
I remember that. That was
cool. and you cruelly blocked that. That was nasty.
Yeah, I just like the idea of a rage quit. You know, like I'm getting out of here bad enough, I'm going to blow up.
Yeah, I thought that was hilarious.
The idea of self-destruct. I know at the time you're like, what the hell? What the hell are you doing, man?
Yeah, because I mean, I think you've probably got some of these things in the mod where, obviously, because I've made an effort to not look at the README file in advance, or I don't know what to expect from certain things, and obviously you haven't told me things like that either. So you're probably sitting there wondering, I wonder when he's going to try and do one of these things.
I mean, there's one issue, well, not issue, but one, like a kind of mechanic that I introduced into Final Fantasy X. It did exist, but only to a very minor detail, and that was the count system for the protect shell and things like that, turn-based things. You do have it with regen anyway. You cast regen, it lasts for 10 turns, simple as.
True.
But I wanted to do it for other things. Now the only thing that's really has come apparent about it is the haste. Because you've not really noticed it on many others, because it's quite hard to get a kind of system going for things like protect. Not to make it too unusable by saying put it for 5 turns and then it's done with. But
yeah, I agree.
Then again, it's not going down as quick as I want it to go down. But there's not really much. It's only comes into its own really probably in boss battles where you're in there for a long time.
Yeah,
but on normal encounters you don't really notice it, and I did want to try and tweak that, but I don't probably think I will do.
Yeah, honestly, in my opinion, I don't think the random encounters need to be tweaked in that sense. I think in boss battles it's good enough that for me, like personally, I think one of the main purposes of doing that would be to keep players on their toes and keep them checking whether they have protect or not. And I think it achieves that purpose, because almost every single time before you know an attack is coming against like a difficult boss, you will have to go in and check who's got what buff and make sure that they always remain buffed. And I think in that sense it's a job well done. So
I think the other thing that I've introduced, which I don't know whether you like or not, sometimes you probably like it, sometimes you probably think I wish it weren't there, and that's the block of scan. Sensor and scan for bosses. Because I'm kind of thinking, one of the things that we always do is either put a sensor on and he's got that much HP left. By blocking it, it's like, how much HP has he got in the first place? How much is left? Do I need to do this? It's just another tweak to make it a bit more harder experience.
I think it's one of these things where when I'm playing, when you're in the heat of the moment, you're like, damn it, I wish. I mean, come on, just let us know what the HP is, instead of forcing me to mentally try and have an idea of it. Just tell us. But I think, like, in retrospect, I think that added like adrenaline of not knowing, because you could literally be an attack away, but if you're against an extremely difficult boss, you just can't take that risk. And I think that added layer of decision making about, do I go for what I think could be the final blow, or do I make sure I recast protect, or like use a potion or whatever, or summon a shield, etc. I think keeping that decision making and that adrenaline, I think, is still the best idea. So I think not having a sensor in that sense is probably still the best. The only thing, like objectively, I think that is a problem with that is the fact that we can't tell if a boss has armor break or mental break or magic break or not. And I think that can get a bit frustrating when you're playing.
Yeah, I suppose so. But I know you were trying to count the damage on Overdrive Sin as well when you were battling him. It's like, Have I done that? Shit, what did I do?
Yeah, I mean, the Overdrive Sin is, of course, I think it's probably the boss battle in the game for which you have to do that counting the most, because it's literally a race against time.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of agree with a bit of the lower the resistances for the brakes as well, because obviously I made them. Again, it was all done originally this, where, well, he's a big boss, you can break him, but he's not going to be easy to break.
Of course, yeah.
You know what I mean? And again, it's just finding that middle ground sort of thing, so some of it will be addressed.
I think for me with that, the bigger problem was that not so much the resistance, but until you get, like, let's say a healthy supply of frag grenades or something, you don't really have a way of doing it repeatedly. So like Auron, he's slow enough as it is. We have haste running out all the time. And when you have armor break, which is a higher rank move, which causes more delay, it's like if you need, let's say, 5 hits from Auron, it takes like 8 minutes of the battle to potentially try and get the armor break on sometimes. So that's when it can get a bit more difficult. But I think once you've got frag grenades, it wasn't a problem because it was a quicker move. So even if you needed like 4 frag grenades to get it, let's say, you can cycle through that more quickly. But if you have to rely on Auron to get a break and the resistance is fairly high, I think when those two things come together, it does get a bit more grindy.
Yeah, I suppose it goes back to my original idea when I first started it, which was if you're going to have a high resistance, then you need to use a more powerful attack like Banishing Blade or something like that, which will probably not necessarily guarantee you a break, but give you a very high success rate at it. But again, that was the original idea, but I can see your point with the time scale on things like Overdrive Sin, because obviously if you're wasting a few attacks trying to get it on there, then even if you do get it on there, you might have just done your legs already.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, some bosses, I think that's why Sin's Fin was really annoying as well, because he had the negation thing too. So not only was it difficult, but then it got negated as well. So it was just like, well, okay, I'm not going to bother with it then.
So I can see that, and again, that some of these things will be addressed anyway, definitely.
But I mean, again, looking at it overall, I mean, considering, like we've always said, it's just one person who's had an idea for how to mod the game, and I've played through, 85 hours of it and done all of this content. Honestly, I'd say like 90 to 95% of it I thought was brilliant. I mean, of course, like we've already talked about, there's things that can be made better, but considering this was just like one guy trying to mod the game, I think you've done a brilliant job for most of it. So
sure.
I think, by the time the public release is ready, like we go through the post game, we continue to talk and tweak and all that kind of stuff. I really think one thing I'm worried about is that there's the I think it's called Sin Unleashed. There's a Steam version mod. I don't know if you've heard of it before.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, like, once I'm done with this one's been such a cool, unique experience. Again, I've got to be involved in like the actual process and stuff. I feel like if I try Sin Unleashed, I might be like, this mod really pales in comparison to what I've been working with like the past couple of years. So
the thing with some of these ones though is that my hat goes off to all modders and all that, because it is a very hard thing to do at times, and especially when you're doing a lot more than I'm doing as far as like graphical stuff and things like that. But
of course, if
it comes to something like Unleashed, for instance, I believe I watched an episode on it, which was the Arena and the Dark Aeons. Now, it's my information that this particular mod I was watching, everything was increased by about 60%, I think it is. So HP is increased by 60%, strength, defense, blah, blah, blah. But when I actually was counting the damage, all the stuff in the Arena and the Dark Aeons wasn't increased. So they're actually fighting vanilla versions and saying, look how hard they are now because it's the mod. And I thought, it's not even changed. So I don't know whether they changed the strength stat a little bit, but the HP definitely wasn't changed. So that Balefur still had 800,000, Nemesis still had 10 million. And it was just the same, and I thought, because I think one of the comments the guy made who was playing it said, oh bloody hell, Armageddon's just killed me, 99,999, everything for Nemesis, and that's the power of this mod. And I thought, he killed you for that anyway, in vanilla.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, I'm not saying it's not a good mod, it probably is, but I think they need to address the Arena section and Dark Aeon, definitely. I don't know whether the weapons in Omega Ruins were changed, because he came in with Celestial weapons and just kicked his ass anyway. So,
okay.
So, I mean, watch it by all means. I'm not saying it's not a good video, but I wish they did actually mod the HP as well. if that's what they were meant to have done, because it was just kind of like vanilla to me. A guy just playing it for the first time.
That's interesting. Okay, I mean,
by all means, check it out. Like I said, I'm not dissing any modders because it is a hard job to do, and
of course,
kudos to all of them. Fair play to them.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's going to be a long time before I get there anyway. And I think once I'm done with this one, I'll probably need a break again from Final Fantasy X anyway. So
I think you need some of Warren Saki, I think. Oh, no, sorry, Nog in it. Nog in it. That's what it's in there. Nog.
Yes, it's Nog.
Yeah,
exactly.
Nog.
And I mean, I think I'll probably, because I've been so spoiled on this mod and like the whole process and that kind of thing, I need a little bit of a break and maybe try some like a mod for a different Final Fantasy game or something. So, I mean, is there any other things that you want to work on, like in the future? Like once this is all done and hopefully we get it out to the public, do you have like any further ambitions with this kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, everyone probably knows about me UCG guide, or Ultimate Companion Guide, as I called it.
Sure. Yeah. Brilliant.
At the moment, it's just plain text with it's on Scribd at the moment. I know it's not the best site for people to get on at times, but people always ask me, why don't you let us download it? I did disable the downloading part of it just for the fact that it wasn't properly finished yet, and I didn't want to keep everyone taking this and that and then it's not right, and so I'm kind of thinking I want to get it all done first, then I release it, sort of thing.
Sure.
But obviously the work on that slowed down because they had the idea now that I'm going to work on after this doing like a book version with pictures and proper tables and all that on it. I have actually started it a couple of years ago, but obviously through other things it's kind of dried up, but I do plan on finishing it, and I think it will look like a very good. I think I'm going to change the title to maybe the Final Fantasy X Bible, unless that offends some people. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, it to me, like for me, that is like my Bible for when I play Final Fantasy X. It's amazing.
Obviously, everything's work in progress, so it's just what I'm calling it at the moment. But I have got pictures, so you can by all means show it. As well, I don't know. I'm thinking of doing like 100% in one playthrough. Well, not a walkthrough, but a video with Final Fantasy X2.
Okay.
I'm kind of thinking about that. I have got.
So yeah, you'd mentioned that you were a big fan of 10.2, right?
I do really like it, to be honest. And again, some of the aspects I've put into this mod I've got from that game, like the ability I created called Rune Veil. Now, it's quite a mystery to many people, and I know you took a while to figure it out as well. But the idea is, when you know yourself, when you play Final Fantasy X2, there's many accessories that you can get which have pro and con abilities.
True.
And I kind of try to put that aspect into this mod as well. I kind of thought I did a good description, but apparently it needs adjusting, so I may have to adjust it, but yeah, I've kind of updated it a little bit, but that was the idea of it, and obviously the first draft of that item or ability didn't quite go as I expected. But I'm hoping it'll be a lot better in this new mod.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, again, it was an idea that I really liked because once again, I mean, when you introduce like a new, let's say, weapon abilities, that's just another very clear-cut kind of way of knowing that you're playing a modded version of the game. But I think that for people like me, because I'm just so used to seeing what the abilities are in vanilla, when I saw something new and I saw a description that was quite cryptic, it's quite hard to tell like in game what those things are, because a lot of things don't really have like a visual manifestation. So let's say it has an inbuilt magic defense plus 20%. To actually equip that and realize that that's what's happening, I think it takes a bit too much trial and error to figure out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I tried to use the same terminology as much as the game uses. So, for instance, you equip Shell or look at Shell, it'll say increases magic defense. That's basically what it says. So, if I did an ability which kind of mimics that, I'd probably put raises magic defense as well as something else, because I'm trying to use this. I don't want to try and go away from how the game actually addresses stuff. I'm trying to use a similar terminology to keep it simple, as opposed to, because as you well know, I've changed quite a lot of the scan details to try and mimic the changes as much as I can. And I know some of the aspects, like the Chimera's brain, I think you got a bit frustrated with the auto haste.
Yeah, I mean,
I think you got a 1 in 4 chance of getting it, and you get it every time. I think it's typical.
Yeah, I think that was why. I think if I encountered that one like later on, maybe it wouldn't have been as bad. But because I got it straight off the bat, I was like, "What the hell? Like this is insane."
And
calm down. It's too difficult.
The Machina from Carmlands, it's like, you got a bug here, mate. You got Dark just appeared on me.
Yeah,
yeah. Read the scan data, mate.
Yeah, I was just baffled at that. I mean, some of this stuff, of course, is just so different from what you're used to. I was like, wait a minute, I didn't even do anything. How did I get darkness for that? It's just like.
But
that
then
just
again,
did not feel right.
When you explained it to me, it's like maybe it's a little bit too much having dark and silence on it at the same time. So yeah, that's why I kind of adjusted it. But I thought the defense system they had was a kind of good tweak to the game again, a little bit extra mechanic there. I
thought that was great. I think another one was I said to you at some point it would be nice if we could get enemies kind of supporting each other more. Yeah. So if they had a way to like buff each other or heal each other, and you introduced that in 1 or 2 places as well, and that was really cool to see as well.
I mean, on this new mod, I'm trying to also use unused material. Like there's an enemy in the game, which I don't know whether I think you might be aware of it, called Vapor. It's like a piranha fish, but it's unused. Yeah. So it's like a third. It's like
level. Red coloured, I think you said. Like
like a reddish, pinky red coloured. So I'm gonna try and use that into the mod as well. Just it's not necessarily gonna be the same stats as what it is because it's not got great stats, but just a model anyway, and keep its name. So it's kind of like bringing out some unused material.
Yeah, I think you also used Biora, which wasn't in the original game as well.
There's many actual attacks that never actually got used. A lot of them though now I've actually changed to my own attacks. But I tried to use some of them just to say, look, it was in the game data, it's now officially in the game.
So are there some more examples of that you can think of off the top of your head?
Top of Biora, I think there was one that should have been used by Morty Bodies, or one of the CityMorgue companions anyway. I can't remember which one it was. I think it's Magic Re-enabled it was called. Which basically gave him, it cured silence and gave about 1,000 HP recovery.
Right, okay.
So that's what happens with a couple of attacks that Anima should have had as well, which are only in its attack list and never in the AI. As well as one extra one for Giazgano. Which should have, because his actual is an attack at the beginning of the game, which isn't seen on screen, is called half HP, which obviously relates to the fact that it reduces your HP by 50%. He's also got another one called 1 HP, which it doesn't reduce it to 1, it just reduces it to 1/16 of what it should be.
Right.
But that was never used either in his. So I kind of used that elsewhere in the game.
Okay.
I tried to use everything that I possibly could, as well as use some of the lesser ones for my own attack. So every single attack is used now. So the actual attack data is brimming. I think I've used even all the extra character attacks that were available. They had about an extra 10 slots that you could use, so I've used all them up as well.
Wow.
So I basically used everything I possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, Omnis, I think, was the best example of where you really just tried to maximize everything that was possible.
Yeah, I really did want to do more with Omnis, and even though I enjoyed the final kind of the final draft of it, but I really wanted to get a bit more out of him if I could. It was just down to damn camera angles that I just couldn't figure out. So
right, I see.
I know I used Aeon attacks with him, which I know people liked, especially Zamato. I kind of got a thrill out of Zamato because he kind of looked like he was nodding, going, "Take me on, come and get this."
Yeah, I agree.
But I didn't want to use the later ones because you may not have acquired them at the time, like Oblivion and things like that.
Yeah.
So I stayed away from them. I did try other ones as well, like Mega Flare, Thor's Hammer, and they worked. They didn't not work, but I don't think they had the same effect than Hellfire and Diamond Dust did. So I kind of picked them because, I mean, 4 hammers weren't too bad, but it did exactly the same damage as Diamond Dust, bar him being thunder based. And as it didn't look as good as Diamond Dust, I thought, you know what, I'll just stick with Diamond Dust because it looks better eye candy.
Yeah, I think Diamond Dust, of course, because he has this like translucent kind of icy look. I think it definitely worked well.
I know the moveset is slightly off at times because when I was actually doing it, I got so far down the AI when I was actually modding it, and it's like there are so many entries. And it got to a point where I thought I've done them all, and I've got another two, and I'm thinking, bloody hell. And I'm thinking there's probably one or two combinations which quite might not be exactly as I put down on the list. I will go through it again and try and identify all the missing ones when it comes to full release, but yeah, I know you got a bit of surprise, like, what? That's not on the list. What's going on?
Yeah, I know.
Damn you! Donor!
So which one was like your favorite part of the mod? Like either maybe a segment or a boss that you enjoyed the most?
I'm kind of enjoying it all, to be honest with you. To be honest with you, I'm actually enjoying it more now. I'm further modding it on your playthrough because, to be honest with you, a lot of the bosses before your playthrough were a lot less complex. I just thought I needed to go that extra mile just to make it good, and as I've done them, I'm thinking I wish I did this in the first place.
Right.
But again, I don't want to make it too much. But I think it's worked out okay. I mean, I know I kind of went a bit OTT on Izaru's Aeons when you got
just
there.
a bit, yeah.
You're like, what the hell, man?
That was insane.
But I've kind of enjoyed it all. I wish I could have done more to it, but I have enjoyed all of it. I don't think there's been one place where I felt I don't like this. You know, I kind of thought I like it all. Everything. I thought I've done it. Not too much at the beginning until you get into it. Yeah. You know, get to the Mien, barring the Evil Achu, of course. But barring that, and maybe a bit of a whoa on the Sins Fin. But when you get to Mien, that was meant to be the first difficulty spike.
Yeah, I mean, I think you mapped that sort of thing out really well, because obviously, like we've said, the game starts really slow. So I think if you get too difficult and too grindy early in the game, you need to build up a little bit of momentum first before I think that stuff should come in. So I think you did a good job. Yeah,
I'm really pleased with how it's gone so far, and I'm quite happy with all the comments that I've seen so far. I know not all of them are positive. Some are. I mean, I'm trying to answer as many as I can. Sure. If people post something that's saying, I don't know why you don't do this or you should have done that, sometimes I'll try and explain the idea behind it. I've not really responded to a lot recently, but I've tried to keep on top of the main ones, and people have responded to me, so it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of these things where, of course, there's a whole mixture of different people at different levels, so people will sometimes suggest things that maybe to them at the time sounds really reasonable, but it's not really a valid thing that you could do, like in the playthrough, like in the mod and that kind of thing. But there's been some like good insight as well. Some people have come in with some like good thoughts and good opinions as well. It's been nice to share it with the audience and have their feedback too.
Kudos to everyone.
Yeah, I mean it's nice because it's turned it into more of a collective effort at the end of the day.
It's kind of like your own community now, your own Final Fantasy X community.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean that's for me, like in most recent years, that's been my favorite thing about what I've been doing on YouTube. Just getting to know more people, getting to interact more with the community, build more of a community. Because I mean, we all share like a common interest and a common passion, so I think it's nice to be able to bring that stuff together. And this mod has just been great for it. I mean, it's been really fun to do.
I mean, people ask me as well, why don't you accept donations and things like that? But I don't object to money or anything. But to me, I always say no to things like that because to me, it's just for fun. Doing this is just for fun. It's not. I'm not there to make money out of it. Mm-hmm. And if people start donating to you kind of get donated, so it kind of covers your time you're spending on it, rather than real life sort of thing.
Yeah.
But if I do that, it's kind of like, well, you're giving me. If I give you money, then I expect you to be working on it all the time. Whereas I'm just doing it for fun, so I don't want to take people's money and then just can't be asked for a week, take a week off, and then it kind of drags its heels. So I've never kind of agreed to that sort of incentive on this sort of thing. I don't object to it, but I wouldn't personally take it myself because I'm doing it just for fun. I'm doing it just for the people. When I get some time, I carry on with it. If there's sometimes I can't do it, at least then I've got no commitment to do it.
Sure. I mean, of course, for like the general gaming community, that's why I always admire people like you, because you have a much more like old school mentality, I think, with this kind of thing. So like when I rewind back 10 years before anyone was ever making any money off this kind of stuff, people like you were putting in like all these hours, just countless hours into making free content for people. So people that would write FAQs, like some of these FAQs were just like insanely detailed. Like people must have spent hundreds of hours on these, maybe more. And they would just do it because they had a love and a passion for the game and they wanted to share something. So I think you've retained that sort of mentality about it, and I think that's great, because I mean, you just look at the Ultimate Companion Guide and you see all the work in that, and it obviously you've done it just, you know, for free and for people to benefit from and enjoy. And it's great that we have people like you that are able to do this for us, because without you guys, you know, there's a lot of great like information and content that we'd never get access to.
I think you forget basically in this day and age how much work goes into doing certain things. I mean, even just doing my own personal guides and things like that, it takes ages. And I think about people who do this for, I won't say a living, but they do it quite a lot. And like people like Split on game FAQs, I think that he does the same. He does or he did, I don't know what he does now, but he did loads in the past. And I'm thinking, where'd you get the time to do it? Yeah, you know what I mean, it's so big, the file, so much information goes in there, and it's like, you know what, hats off to you. I mean, absolutely. I won't mind doing it myself, but wow, that's all I can say to them people. Wow, you know what I mean, they deserve the money, but like I said, I just don't go down that road, because to me that's like a commitment, and I just do it for fun. I do it for myself. I do it for the people as well. Anyone, absolutely. So what motivates me is people who, like yourself, you know, come on, I want to play your game, you know what I mean, I need to get this thing. So the more people want it, the more I'm going to do it. If it goes quiet, I'll be kind of like, I want to do it, but maybe I'll give it a break a little bit. And then the more you give it a break, the more time you're probably going to think, I'll leave it for a bit longer. And then before you know it, you've gone months without doing anything. So that's my motivation for it, just the people wanting to play it. So this is why I always say to people, feel free to do videos on it, post about it, you know what I mean? Anything to get it out there, that's all I ask. So I don't want anything else from you. If you can do that, that's great. If you don't, just enjoy it. It's fine.
That's one of the main reasons I wanted to do it as well. I mean, of course, for me, as Final Fantasy X content is something that I can always, it's like a crutch I can always lean on the channel. But I'm always looking for ways to bring fresh content. And I think because I'd known about you and the mod for so long, like it was one of those like light bulb moments where I was like, well, I can get the best of both worlds, because I've had an interest in this mod for a long time, but I've always put it off because I wanted to do other things on the channel. But now I think is a good time for this. And also, obviously, like you say, it gives a lot more people a chance to discover what you've been working on, and to get a bit of hype going and a bit of interest going for the mod, so that when we do release it, you know, you'll have a much bigger audience of people that want to play it. So I think in that sense, it's been good for both of us, I think.
As I think I spoke to you about before as well, I think for the final release we need to just modify a few text files just to mention, Bert came down here and got toasted by Isaru.
Yeah, it's like those,
on some of the conversations you have with him, just to put your name where Dovran was meant to be.
yeah, I think it would be like those. There's some games where like if you turn the online features on, you can see like players that have died in certain areas just be like, Dansg08 was obliterated here.
This was a statue of Dansg08.
Yeah, that's it.
Not Lord Mehen anymore, it's changed.
That would be hilarious.
It's just a pity you couldn't change the model in it and just stick your model in there.
Yeah, why not?
That would be difficult.
But yeah, I think when it comes out, hopefully it'll be fun. I mean, obviously, at least initially, I think a lot of the people that are going to download it are going to be people that are already following the series. So I'll be on hand to, you know, talk to people, see what their experiences have been. You'll be able to get a lot of feedback. Personally, if you're up to me, I know money is not a motivation at all for you, but if I were giving you advice on this, I'd probably say it would be nice if you had some kind of tip jar, like after you finished making it anyway. So you're already done with the work, and anyone that wants to show their appreciation for the work that you've put in, like after the fact, I think it might be nice, you know, just to get a little, you know, gesture of, you know, goodwill and just like support from people that want you to to do what you do and to support you in that way. So I think
It's not a bad idea. I mean, like I said, I'm not against it. I'm not, it's nice to have a bit of appreciation, but that's for the people to decide. To be honest, if they want to do that, I've got no problem with that. I just don't expect it. I'm just quite happy for people to play it and say, you know what, you've done a good job there. I've enjoyed it. If at least one person can get full enjoyment out of it and say, you know what, I've enjoyed it. It took many years to do it, but just one person's happy for it. That's fine.
Exactly.
That's all it's for.
I think there's going to be a lot of people that hopefully going to enjoy this, and they're going to sink a lot of hours into this, because Final Fantasy X it's that game, man. It's so timeless that there's still so many people playing it after like 20 years that any opportunity to experience it in a fresh way, I think a lot of people are going to gravitate to that. So
now, if I didn't want to go for donuts all them years ago, I probably never would have picked it up.
Exactly. And if my dad didn't happen to have a delivery to that random place, it's just weird coincidences, man. Life is strange.
It is, but it's also brilliant. And it's kind of like the baby, innit? It's like your baby no matter what game you play. Even though because I've done this mod, I don't technically play it that much now, Final Fantasy X, because I'm kind of always, vanilla is like, oh no, I'm used to all these statuses and now it's just playing, but I still love the game, but I don't play it that often.
I get you.
I play probably more Final Fantasy X2 these days. I know a lot of people will probably think, why, it's rubbish, but you know yourself, the story actually gets going as you get into it. Mm-hmm. I think people, when they first play it, expect it to be just like Final Fantasy X. But you can't win, because if it was just like Final Fantasy X, people then will go, well, it's just a copy of Final Fantasy X, it's boring.
Yeah.
So they make it different in nearly every single way, and then it's shit, because it's not like Final Fantasy X. So you can't really win, but if you actually give it a go, it is there's actually elements in there which is better than Final Fantasy X. But I'll always love that game regardless.
I think especially when I played the remaster and you had like the creature creations and the Via Infinito and all that kind of stuff, I thought that definitely added something to the experience as well. So I think that as an overall package, I think was good. I said pretty much similar things to what you said when I was kind of reviewing my experience of 10.2. Like you say, I mean, I've always enjoyed it, but I wouldn't put it among a higher tier of Final Fantasy game. But it didn't mean I didn't enjoy it. I just felt like, especially with the 100% thing, it just felt like insanity. Like you need, not only do you need a guide, but you need to literally follow it so meticulously, and there's so many ways in which you can fail to get the 100%. It seemed like really overkill for that 100%, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, many people, when they were playing the original before it come out, were saying about, have you done 100% on the game? And then people were going, well, what's 100%? It's your own interpretation of what's 100%. And then they give you a counter, and then people go, oh, I don't like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So as I said, you can never win. You can't please everyone.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, I think they did a really good... I'm not saying it's perfect by a long shot, but it is a really good game, and I still like it anyway. But I must admit, I've enjoyed watching some of your challenges and some of the... I'm watching your Final Fantasy X2 ones at the moment.
Right, okay.
No, it was obviously you did it about 5 years ago, didn't you? Something like that.
Yes.
Quite a while ago, but saying it's not 100%, it's just your take on it, it's just your doing what interests you.
Yeah, I mean, it was one I was a little bit reluctant to do, because obviously I did Final Fantasy X first, and that was such a hit, and obviously I knew the game so well, and I think I had this feel of expectation, like everyone wanted me to do exactly the same level of walkthrough for 10.2, and I just knew that wasn't what I wanted to do. So I was worried that people were going to be like, oh man, the 10 walkthrough was so much better, like this one isn't as detailed and all that stuff. But I mean, I didn't want to do it exactly the same just for the sake of it. Like, if that's not what I was feeling, I didn't want to do it. So that's why, I mean, I decided to just put that disclaimer and stuff in the beginning, just so people realize that this isn't exactly the same thing.
It's just nice watching someone else play through it. The good thing about it is, because you're not doing 100%, I get to see scenes I've not actually seen myself, because I always go for 100%.
Right. Okay.
Because obviously you've got to do it in a certain way. You might not get the same scenes all the time, so...
That's true.
But, I mean, now I've got the microphone and all that, I'm kind of thinking if I can get a way to record off my telly, because I'm using my telly to actually play the game, not the computer, then I can maybe do something similar. It won't be as good as yours, but, you know what I mean, maybe just put a few tidbits of facts in there, about the mechanics of the game, because not many people know about Final Fantasy X2 mechanics. I don't know everything, but I've found out a few things.
Sure. I mean, again, like you've said all along, it's all just fun. I mean, that's how I started doing this thing. I didn't get partnered for like 4 years, I think. So I made videos, quote unquote, for free for 4 years, just because I enjoyed sharing what I was doing with people. So
I mean, I always thought your name was Dan at first. When I first seen the name, and it's only when you explained what it meant, I thought, that's why you called that. When I looked at that, I thought, why you called Burke? So I thought you called Dan, and then what was it? Dark Anime Nose Figure 2008, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I mean. That's why it's such a weird coincidence. Like this entire YouTube adventure that I've been on, again, it's just because I played Final Fantasy X and I fell in love with it, and I wanted to do like the nose figure challenge and that kind of thing. I mean, if it was maybe, let's say, 3 years ago, and it was like 2004, 2005 when I was really deep into it, it would have been too early for YouTube. So I might have still tried to do all this stuff. But the only reason that I decided to open a channel was because by 2008, people started uploading Final Fantasy X content on there, and I was like, well, if I do something as miraculous as beat Dark Anima Nose Figure, I need video proof, because no one's going to believe me. So it was just like, I need to make a YouTube channel for this, and literally just started from there.
Yeah, Final Fantasy X will always be my baby as far as Final Fantasy games are. I mean, I did used to have on the PS1 Final Fantasy VIII, I think it was. 7 or 8, one of the two, but I never really got into it, so this was really my first proper incarnation of Final Fantasy.
Yeah, I think we're very much alike in that sense, for sure.
Yeah, well, I was just going to ask you, what's your favourite characters in it?
Oh,
I know it's a big scope to go through, but
I mean, for me, Final Fantasy X has always been about, like, Auron's always been my favourite character. It's, for me, like, just, I don't know if you ever watched the Auron story video that I made about him.
I think I probably have done, but it might have been a while ago, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think he was like, a lot of these games, I think, like especially Final Fantasy games, they tend to have like a lot of youth in the game. Like the protagonists are very young, they're high energy and all that kind of stuff. And then like Auron as this, like, I know technically he's meant to be 35, but that's just ridiculous. He's more like 50. But his demeanor, like the way he was always just so cool, calm, collected, so wise. He basically knew everything all along. And like just his general, like the way he subliminally kind of controlled and guided that party to do what they needed to do. His voice acting, the fact that his entire reason for being a part of this story, and ultimately one of the reasons why they were successful in the end, was just because of the loyalty that he had to Jecht and Braska, and the promise he made to Jecht, and the sacrifice he made in order to make that promise happen. I don't know, just for me, Auron is just everything about him. I mean, in battle, you're seeing in the P-Birdman mod, he's an absolute tank, he's a star, he has his clutch moments. I don't know, Auron for me, he's always that guy. He's a special character for me.
I think it should be the Auron mod at the moment, but I find it remarkable that he actually aged after he died. I didn't know you could age when you were Pyroflies, but obviously that's Spira for you.
Yeah, I mean, good old Pyroflies is the solution to everything.
Yeah, should use that now. It might help out.
Yeah, maybe you should have some kind of attack like in like as an homage to Pyroflies or something.
Yeah. Me personally, I do like them main characters, but I always find it's the side characters which are more.
Really? Okay, which ones?
And I know I'm probably going to say similar ones to you, because I actually like him as well. I like Bartello. Yeah, he's got so limited vocabulary.
Yeah,
that is really, really good. I think he's only got one page, and even that's only one line, saying Donna. Or, Donna! Of course, Hypello. I love them little dudes. Even like in X2, when you had the hot spring scene, when it was just the three girls, and you had two Hypellos in the corner just waving. He's like, where did they come from all of a sudden? Toasting away. And obviously, when you go on the shoot buff, innit? All aboard! Absolutely.
There we go.
Absolutely. And that all them are going to come out really, really terrible, I know. when I say it to myself now, it sounds good, it sounds perfect, but when I hear it back, it's like, don't give up your day job.
That's the curse of this whole like
Yeah.
recording yourself thing. It's really annoying because it happens all the time. Like you think you sound one way and then you hear yourself back and it's totally another. But I think the fact that people listening to this got to hear P-Birdman do a high pillow impression, I think that's gonna
Probably that's it. I don't want to hear you again.
I think that's gonna trump everything else. I think they'll love that. There's no such thing as a bad high pillow impression. It's just the fact that you went for it, I think, is always what matters.
I think it'd probably come out as a Weasley high pillow. Should we call it a white pillow now?
I think we'll have to see in the comments for that one, see what people thought of it.
Oh well, it's all part of the fun.
Absolutely. All right, man. I think we can start to wrap things up. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you. It's been good fun. I think maybe we should do this again once the entire mod is finished and we've done the post game and stuff as well.
Yeah, it's been really great to be on here. Thanks for having me, as well as thanks to all the patrons of yours and the viewers who actually made these mods and all these projects possible. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, me and P-Birdman gonna keep working, keep recording, keep tweaking, keep discussing, and hopefully bring you guys the best mod that we can. So thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you soon, P-Birdman. Take care, man.
Yeah, take care of yourself. See you guys.